Hello everyone, it's Rich Michael Jones. Time for the Bible read for July 15th out of 1 Chronicles 19. Sometime after this, King Nahash of the Ammonites died and his son Hanun became king. David said, I am going to show loyalty to Hanun because his father Nahash was always loyal to me. So David sent messengers to express sympathy to Hanun about his father's death. But when David's ambassadors arrived in the land of Ammon, the Ammonite commander said to Hanun, Do you really think these men are coming here to honor your father? No, David has sent them to spy out the land so they can come in and conquer it. So Hanun seized David's ambassadors and shaved them, cut off their robes at the buttocks, and sent them back to David in shame. And then David heard what had happened to the men. He sent messengers to tell them, Stay at Jericho until your beards grow out, and then come back, for they felt deep shame because of their appearance. When the people of Ammon realized how seriously they had angered David, Hanun and his Ammonites sent 75,000 pounds of silver to hire chariots and charioteers from Aram Naharaim, Aram Maacah, and Zobath. They also hired 32,000 chariots and secured the support of the king of Maacah and his army. These forces camped at Medeba, where they were joined by the Ammonite troops that Hanun had recruited from his own towns. When David heard about this, he sent Joab and all the warriors to fight them. The Ammonite troops came out and drew up their battle lines at the entrance of the city, while the other kings oppositioned themselves to fight in the open fields. When Joab saw that he would have to fight on both the front and the rear, he chose some of Israel's elite troop and placed them under his personal command to fight the Arameans in the fields. He left the rest of the army under command of his brother Abishai, who was to attack the Ammonites. If the Arameans are too strong for me, then come over and help me, Joab told his brother. And if the Ammonites are too strong for you, I will help you. Be courageous, let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. May the Lord's will be done. When Joab and his troop attacked, the Arameans began to run away, and when the Ammonites saw the Arameans running, they also ran from Abishai and retreated into the city. Then Joab returned to Jerusalem. The Arameans now realized that they were no match for Israel, so they sent messengers and summoned additional Aramean troops from the other side of the Euphrates River. Their troops were under the command of Shobach, the commander of Hadazer's forces. When David heard what was happening, he mobilized all Israel, crossed the Jordan River, and positioned his troops in battle formation. Then David engaged the Arameans in battle, and they fought against him. But again the Arameans fled from the Israelites. This time David's forces killed 7,000 charioteers and 40,000 foot soldiers, including Shobach, the commander of their army. When Hadazer's allies saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they surrendered to David and became his subjects. After that, the Arameans were no longer willing to help the Ammonites. In the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, Joab led the Israelite army in successful attack against the land of the Ammonites. In the process, he laid siege to the city of Rabbah. However, David stayed behind in Jerusalem. When David arrived at Rabbah, he removed the crown from the king's head, and it was placed on his own head. The crown was made of gold and set with gems, and he found that it weighed 75 pounds. David took a vast amount of plunder from the city. He also made slaves of the people in Rabbah and forced them to labor with saws, irons, picks, iron axes. That is how David dealt with the people of all the Ammonite towns. Then David and all the army returned to Jerusalem. After this war broke out with the Philistines at Gezer, as they fought, Sibbecai from Husha killed Saph, a descendant of the giants, and so the Philistines were subdued. During another battle with the Philistines, Elkanah, son of Jair, killed Lamai, the brother of Goliath of Gath. The handle of Lamai's spear was as thick as a weaver's beam. In another battle with the Philistines at Gath, they encountered a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all, who was also a descendant of the giants. But when he defied and taunted Israel, he was killed by Jonathan, the son of David's brother Shimei. These Philistines were descendants of the giants of Gath, but David and his warriors killed them. Satan rose up against Israel and caused David to take a census of the people of Israel. So David said to Joab and commanders of the armies, "Take a census of all the people of Israel, and from Beersheba in the south to Dan in the north, and bring me a report so I may know how many there are." But Job replied, "May the Lord increase the number of his people 100 times over. But why, my lord the king, do you want to do this? Are they not all your servants? Why must you cause Israel to sin?" But the king insisted that they take the census. So Job traveled throughout all of Israel to count the people. And then he returned to Jerusalem and reported the number of people to David. There were 1,100,000 warriors in all of Israel who could handle a sword, and 470,000 in Judah. But Job did not include the tribes of Levi and Benjamin in the census, because he was so distressed at what the king had made him do. God was very displeased with this census, and he punished Israel for it. And then David said to God, "I have sinned greatly by taking this census. Please forgive me my guilt for doing this foolish thing." Then the Lord spoke to Gad, David's seer. This was his message: "Go and say to David, this is what the Lord says. I will give you 3 choices. Choose one of these punishments, and I will inflict it on you." So Gad came to David and said, "These are the choices the Lord has given you. You may choose 3 years of famine, 3 months of destruction by the sword of your enemies, or 3 days of severe plague, as the angel of the Lord brings devastation throughout the land of Israel. Decide what answer I should give the Lord who sent me." "I am in a desperate situation," David replied to Gad, "but let me fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercy is very great. Do not let me fall into human hands." So the Lord sent a plague upon Israel, and 70,000 people died as a result. And God sent an angel to destroy Jerusalem, but just as the angel was preparing to destroy it, the Lord relented and said to the death angel, "Stop, that is enough." At that moment the angel of the Lord was standing by the threshing floor of the Arna, the Jebusites. David looked up and saw the angel of the Lord standing between heaven and earth with his sword drawn, reaching out over Jerusalem. So David and the leaders of Israel put on burlap to show their deep distress and fell face down on the ground. And David said to God, "I am the one who called for the census. I am the one who has sinned and done wrong. But these people are as innocent as sheep, and I have they done. What have they done, O Lord? My God, let your anger fall against me and my family, but do not destroy your people." Then the angel of the Lord told Gad to instruct David to go up and build an altar to the Lord and on the threshing floor of Arnon the Jebusites. So David went up to do what the Lord had commanded him through Gad. Araunah, who was busy threshing wheat at the time, turned and saw the angel there. His 4 sons who were with him ran away and hid. When Arnon saw David approaching, and he left his threshing floor and bowed before David with his face to the ground. David said to Arnon, "Let me buy this threshing floor from you as it is full at its full price. Then I will build an altar to the Lord. There is so that he will stop the plague. Take it, my lord the king, and use it as you wish." Araunah said to David, "I will give the oxen for the burnt offerings and the threshing boards for wood to build a fire on the altar, and the wheat for the grain offering. I will give it all to you." But King David replied to Araunah, "No, I insist on buying it for the full price. I will not take what is yours and give it up to the Lord. I will not present burnt offerings that have cost me nothing." So David gave Araunah 600 pieces of gold in payment for the threshing floor. And David built an altar here to the Lord and sacrificed burnt offerings and peace offerings. And when David prayed, the Lord answered him by sending fire from heaven to burn up the offerings on the altar. And then the Lord spoke to an angel, who put the sword back into his sheath. When David saw that the Lord had answered his prayer, he offered sacrifices there at Araunah's threshing floor. At that time, the tabernacle of the Lord and the altar of the burnt offerings that Moses had made in the wilderness were located at the place of worship in Gibeon. But David was not able to go there to inquire of God, because he was terrified by the drawn sword of the angel of the Lord. Ooh. And the second part of the read is in Romans chapter 2. The Jewish ceremony of circumcision was of value only if you obey God's law. But if you don't obey God's law, you are no better off than an uncircumcised Gentile. And if the Gentile obeys God's law, won't God declare them to be his own people? In fact, uncircumcised Gentiles who keep God's laws will condemn you Jews who are circumcised and possess God's law but don't obey it. For you are not a true Jew just because you were born of Jewish parents, or because you have gone through the ceremony of circumcision. No, a true Jew is one whose heart is right with God, and true circumcision is not merely obeying the letter of the law. Rather, it is a change of heart produced by God's Spirit, and a person with a changed heart speaks praise from God, not from people. Then that's the advantage of being a Jew. If there any value in the ceremony of circumcision? Yes, there are great benefits. First of all, the Jews were entrusted with the whole revelation of God. True, some of them were unfaithful, but just because they were unfaithful, does that mean God will be unfaithful? Of course not. Even if everyone else is a liar, God is true. As the scriptures say about him, you will be proved right in what you say, and you will win your case in court. But some might say our sinfulness serves a good purpose, for it helps people see how righteous God is. Isn't it unfair then for him to punish us? This is merely a human point of view. Of course not. If God were not entirely fair, how would he be qualified to judge the world? But someone might still argue, how can God condemn me as a sinner if my dishonesty highlights his truthfulness and brings him more glory? And some people even slander us by claiming that we say the more we sin, the better it is. Those who say such things deserve to be condemned. Amen. That's the 15th.